day my sister got engaged, I cried in the parking lot of a Panera Bread, not because I was happy for her. Not even because I was jealous, though I'd be lying if I said that wasn't part of it. I cried because I already knew, the way you know a storm is coming before the sky changes, that her engagement was going to cost me something. I just didn't know yet that it would cost me everything I'd spent 7 years building. My name is not important. What's important is that I'm the daughter my mother forgot to brag about. My sister Tara was the one who got the announcements on the refrigerator, the one my mother called her friends about, the one who could do no wrong in a family that kept very careful score. I was the other one, the one who tried hard, the one who was very reliable, said the way you'd describe a Honda Civic. I'm 34. I've been a contracts attorney at Whitmore & Dane, a mid-sized firm in Charlotte, for 6 years. I made associate at 29. I billed more hours than anyone in my cohort for 3 straight years. My performance reviews used words like meticulous and exceptional judgment, and once, memorably, the kind of attorney this firm is built on. I kept that review in my desk drawer. I read it sometimes when I forgot who I was. My sister's event planner. She's good at it, genuinely good, and I've always respected that. What I didn't respect was the way she weaponized her access to my family. She and my mother talked every single day. They had a shared calendar. They did yoga together on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I was 40 minutes away, and I might as well have been in another country. When she got engaged to Donovan, a commercial real estate developer with a jaw like a Roman statue and the emotional range of a parking ticket, the family went into full production mode. The engagement party was at my parents' house in Belmont, catered. Tent rental. A signature cocktail named the Terror. I brought a card and a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, and I smiled until my face ached. That was October. By March, I was out of a job. And the reason I was out of a job had everything to do with my sister and almost nothing to do with my performance. Let me back up. Whitmore & Dane had been going through a quiet restructuring since the previous fall. 2 senior partners had retired, and the firm was bringing in outside talent to fill the gaps, including a new managing partner, a man named Caldwell, who arrived in January with a reputation for cutting headcount before cutting costs. The associates were nervous. The junior partners were nervous. Even the senior staff who'd been there for 20 years were nervous. I wasn't nervous because I had numbers, my billing rate, my client retention, a long-term contract negotiation I just closed that brought in one of the firm's largest healthcare clients. I had a folder on my desktop called Value to Firm that I'd been quietly updating for 2 years, not because I was paranoid, but because I believed in documentation. It's what contracts attorneys do. We anticipate. What I didn't anticipate was my sister. Tara and Donovan had been using a different firm for his real estate dealings, a boutique shop downtown called Aldrich Group. But Donovan's business was expanding, and he needed broader legal coverage, corporate work, employment contracts, some regulatory compliance, the kind of work Whitmore & Dane did well. My sister, bless her heart, decided to help. She reached out to Caldwell directly. I found this out later, much later, from a woman named Vera. Vera had been with the firm for 19 years. She started as a file clerk at 22, taught herself legal billing software, became an office administrator, and then, after a divorce and a period of financial hardship I only learned about in pieces, ended up as a night shift cleaning supervisor contracted through a third-party service. She was 51 years old. She knew where every body was buried, figuratively speaking, and she moved through the office after hours like she was invisible. People talk freely when they think no one important is listening. Vera had been listening for years. She was the one who found me crying in the stairwell the day I was called into Caldwell's office. The meeting was 3 minutes long. That's how long it takes to end 6 years. Caldwell told me the firm was restructuring associate roles and that my position was being realigned. There was a severance package. There was an NDA. There was a woman from HR sitting to his left who didn't make eye contact once. I signed nothing that day. I said thank you, which I will regret until I die, and I walked out. In the stairwell, I sat on a step and stared at the wall. Vera found me there 20 minutes later, coming up with a cart of cleaning supplies. She stopped. She looked at me. She didn't say, "Are you okay?" because it was obvious I was not okay. She said, "Was it today?" I looked up. "What?" "I heard them talking last week," she said quietly. "I didn't know if it would actually happen." She didn't tell me everything right then. She had to think about it, she said. She had things to protect, people who depended on her. But she looked at me for a long moment and said, "Don't sign anything yet. Give me a few days." I went home. I sat in my apartment and I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring, which was unusual. She usually let it go to 3. "I lost my job today," I said. A pause. Then, "Oh, sweetheart, what happened?" Not "Are you okay?" Not "I'm so sorry." What happened? The way you'd ask about a fender bender. Restructuring, I said. They said my position was being realigned. Another pause longer. "Well," she said, "these things happen. Tara knows some people. If you want, I can." "I'm fine," I said. "I don't need Tara's contacts. I'm just saying she has connections, Mum." I stopped. I breathed. "I have to go. I didn't call my sister." I almost did, 3 or 4 times, the way you reach for a habit even when you know it's bad for you. Instead, I called my college roommate, Bex, who lived in Denver and had a blunt, unfussy way of loving me that I depended on more than I ever said out loud. She talked me off the ledge. She told me to eat something. She told me not to sign the NDA. The next morning, I started making notes. What I remembered about the meeting. The exact language Caldwell had used, the timeline of the restructuring conversations I'd been adjacent to, the names of people I'd heard mentioned, the dates of my recent wins. I'd been a contracts attorney long enough to know that the story Caldwell told me was not the only story. There was always another story. Vera called me 4 days later. We met at a diner on South Tryon Street, a booth in the back, 7:15 in the morning before the breakfast rush. She ordered coffee and a side of toast and she set her purse on the seat beside her like she was protecting it. She told me she'd been cleaning the executive suite for 11 years. In that time she'd seen a lot. She'd developed a quiet habit of paying attention, not to interfere, but because she'd learned early on that information was the only currency available to someone in her position. She didn't go looking for trouble, but trouble had a way of leaving itself out in plain sight when people forgot she was there. In January, she had overheard a conversation between Caldwell and one of the senior partners, a man named Reinhold, in the conference room that adjoined the managing partner's office. The door was not fully closed. Vera was in the copy alcove on the other side of the wall, and she heard clearly. Reinhold was explaining a business development opportunity, a referral, a significant real estate client. The referral had come with a condition, not stated explicitly, she said, but understood. The client's contact, and here Vera paused and looked at me over her coffee cup, had expressed that they had concerns about a specific associate, had suggested that the new client relationship might be better served if that associate was no longer with the firm. I felt something cold move through me. "Did they say a name?" I asked. Vera reached into her purse and took out a folded piece of paper. She had found something else. After that conversation, she had been cleaning Reinhold's office and noticed a printed email in the recycling bin. Not the shredder, the recycling bin. She'd unfolded it. Read it. Recognized the name in the CC line. Folded it back up and put it in her purse. She slid the paper across the table. It was a forwarded email chain. The top message was from Tara's personal email address to Donovan, dated 3 weeks before I was let go. It forwarded a longer thread that included an introduction from Donovan to Caldwell, offering a referral of a healthcare-adjacent real estate portfolio worth significant ongoing legal fees. Appended at the bottom of the chain, in Tara's original message to Donovan, were 4 sentences that I read twice before I fully understood them. He should know that Whitmore has an associate in contracts who's been angling for a senior role. She's my sister, and I know that sounds strange, but honestly, she's been difficult lately and I don't think she's a team player. Donovan, I think if you mention it to Caldwell, he'll understand what you're saying. These things have a way of working themselves out. Difficult lately, not a team player. These things have a way of working themselves out. I sat there in that diner booth, and I thought about every Sunday dinner where I'd smiled, every birthday card I'd written, every bridesmaid dress fitting I'd agreed to schedule around my trial prep. I thought about my mother's voice on the phone. Tara knows some people, and I understood, with a clarity that felt almost physical, that my sister had not acted alone. She had acted casually, which was worse. I looked at Vera. "Why are you giving me this?" She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. "Because," she said, 19 years ago I was passed over for an office coordinator position at a firm I worked at. The person who got it had half my experience. I never found out why, but I always suspected someone had said something. I couldn't prove it. I didn't have anything." She paused. "You have something, and you seem like someone who knows what to do with it." I made a copy of the email on my phone. I thanked her. I paid for both our breakfasts. I drove home with both hands on the wheel and my mind working. I did not go to my mother. I did not call my sister. I did not post on social media or call old colleagues to vent. I called an employment attorney, a woman named Schultz who practiced in Uptown and had a reputation for being very, very thorough. I told her everything. She told me not to sign the NDA. I told her I hadn't. Over the next 6 weeks, I did what I do. I documented. I organized the timeline. I identified the specific clauses in my employment contract that might be relevant. Schultz reached out to the firm's general counsel with a letter, careful, factual, not accusatory, that outlined a potential claim for wrongful termination and referenced certain communications that had come to our attention. The letter did not mention Vera. It referenced the email chain without specifying its origin. The firm's general counsel called Schultz within 48 hours. What followed was a negotiation, and I won't pretend it was simple. It took 5 weeks. There were counteroffers in revised terms in one afternoon where I sat in Schultz's conference room and stared at a number on a piece of paper and thought hard about whether I wanted money or I wanted something else. I wanted something else. What I got, in the end, was a formal letter of separation that cited business restructuring, which was true, technically, a severance package that was 3 times the original offer, a clean reference from the firm with specific language I approved, and, most importantly, a letter from the firm addressed to the state bar confirming that my departure was not performance-related and was unrelated to any professional conduct issue. That last letter was the one I cared about most. In law, your reputation is not a soft thing. It is infrastructure. I was not going to let them dismantle mine quietly. Donovan's referral, as far as I know, did not go forward. The firm had decided the business development opportunity was not a good fit. Caldwell, I heard through the industry grapevine, departed the firm by summer under circumstances that were described as mutual. I found a new position 3 months later, a senior associate role at a larger firm with a better corporate practice, a clearer path to partnership, and a managing partner who, in my second interview, said something I wrote down in my notebook afterward. "We don't hire resumes here. We hire judgment." I thought about that for a long time. The wedding was in June. I was still a bridesmaid. I had said yes the previous fall, before everything, and I did not unsay it. Not because I had forgiven my sister. I hadn't. Not entirely, not yet. But because I had thought carefully about what I wanted to carry forward and what I wanted to put down. The dress was coral. It was not a color I would have chosen. What my sister did not know, and what my mother did not know, and what Donovan almost certainly did not know, was that at the rehearsal dinner, I had a conversation with Donovan's business partner, a man named Theo, who had been asking around quietly about corporate legal representation for a new venture he was spinning off separately from Donovan's main business. Theo and I talked for 40 minutes. He was sharp, direct, and frustrated with the transactional approach of his current firm. I gave him my new card. I told him what I did and how I did it. He became a client 2 months later. At the wedding reception, my sister found me near the bar during cocktail hour. She hugged me the way she always did. Quick, performative. The hug of someone who has already moved on to the next thing. "You look great," she said. "Thank you," I said. "So do you." She tilted her head slightly, studying me. There was something in her face, not guilt exactly, but a kind of unease. The look of someone who knows there's a conversation they've been avoiding and suspects it might be coming. "Are things good?" "With work?" "Things are great," I said. And I meant it. She smiled, but it didn't reach all the way. We stood there for a moment in the particular silence of two people who know everything and are choosing to say nothing. Then someone called her name across the room, and she was gone. I went back to the reception table. I ate the salmon. I danced once with my father, who is not a bad man, but who has spent 30 years taking the path of least resistance in a family where that path always ran through my sister. We didn't talk about any of it. We talked about his garden. He's growing tomatoes this year. He seemed happy about the tomatoes. 3 months after the wedding, I made partner. Not a junior partnership, a full equity stake, voted in by the firm's existing partners after a review of my client development record and my billings over the prior 12 months. The vote was not close. My managing partner called me on a Friday afternoon to tell me, and I sat in my car in the parking garage for about 10 minutes afterward, not crying, just sitting, feeling the weight of something lift that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. I called Bex first. Then I called my parents together because I wanted them both to hear it at the same time. My father said, "That's our girl," in a voice that cracked a little. My mother said it was wonderful and asked if there would be a party. I called Vera 2 days later. I had stayed in touch, not frequently but consistently. A text on holidays, a note when something significant happened. She had retired from the cleaning service in the spring, health reasons mostly, and was living with her daughter in Gastonia. I told her about the partnership. She laughed, a real laugh, the kind that sounds like relief. "I knew it," she said. "I told my daughter about you. I said, that woman is going to land on her feet." I told her I was putting together a small dinner for people who mattered. Not a party, a dinner, 10 people, somewhere nice. I wanted her to come. There was a pause. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know I don't," I said. "That's why I want to." She came. We sat across from each other at a round table at a restaurant in Southend with white tablecloths and very good wine, and I made a toast that was mostly about gratitude and specifically about her. The kind of thank you that names the person and says exactly what they did in front of everyone, without softening it or making it small. Vera looked at the table when I said it. Then she looked up and nodded once, and her eyes were bright, and that was enough. On my desk at the new firm, I keep 2 things. A photograph of Bex and me from college, laughing at something neither of us can remember, and a printed copy of my partnership agreement, folded once, in the top right drawer. I open the drawer sometimes, not to read it, just to know it's there. I think about Vera a lot, not in a sentimental way, exactly, more the way you think about a moment that could have gone differently and didn't. She could have kept walking with that cart. She could have decided it wasn't her problem, that she had enough of her own. Nobody would have blamed her, nobody would have even known. But she stopped, and because she stopped, I had something to work with. That's the part that stays with me, not the partnership letter, not the settlement, not the look on my sister's face at the reception when she realized I was fine. Actually fine, not performing fine. What stays with me is that the whole thing turned on one person choosing to pay attention when it was easier not to. Vera had been overlooked for 19 years. She had every reason to be bitter and closed off, to protect what little she had and let everyone else sort themselves out. Instead, she watched. She remembered. She kept a folded piece of paper in her purse for 4 days before she called me. I've thought about why people do that, why some people, after being pushed to the margins, still choose to show up for someone else. I don't think it's because they're saintly, or because they expect something in return. I think it's because integrity doesn't actually shrink when life gets hard. Either you have it or you don't, and Vera had it in abundance, quietly, without making a production of it. What I had to do was be worth it. That sounds simple. But it isn't. There were about 10 moments in those 6 weeks where the easier path was right there. Take the original severance, sign the NDA, start over somewhere new and just never talk about it. Every time I thought about it seriously, I came back to the same thing. If I let this go, I'm not protecting myself. I'm just confirming what my sister believed, which is that I don't fight for myself, that I fold. I didn't fold, but I also didn't swing wildly. I documented. I found counsel. I let the facts carry the argument. That discipline, Sitting down and building a case when you'd rather be screaming. That's not something I learned in law school. I learned it over years of being underestimated and deciding, quietly, every single time, that the answer was to get better and keep going rather than get louder. My sister made a bet that I wouldn't know what hit me. What she didn't account for is that I'd been training for exactly this my entire career. Every performance review I'd saved, every contract clause I'd memorized, every skill I'd sharpened, not because I was paranoid, but because I believed that competence, done honestly and consistently, is its own kind of protection. And then there's the question of what you do with it when you win. I could have gone public. I could have made sure people knew. I chose not to, mostly because I didn't need them to know. I needed to know. That's a distinction that takes a while to understand, the difference between justice that restores you and justice that performs for an audience. I was after the first kind. When I called Vera to invite her to that dinner, she said I didn't have to. She was right. I didn't have to. I wanted to, because the story wasn't complete without her sitting at that table. She was not a footnote. She was load-bearing, and I think there's something important in refusing to let the people who held things together quietly get written out of the ending. The partnership plaque is on my office wall now. Some mornings I look at it and feel proud. Some mornings I just feel tired in the good way, the way you feel after something long and hard is finally finished. Both of those things are true at the same time. That, I think, is what winning actually looks like.